Rommel believed that in the absence of adequate air support, the coastal fortifications provided the key to the defense of the West. The success or failure of the initial landings would determine the outcome of the battle. Rommel's prestige was almost equal to that of Rundstedt. Moreover, he too had direct access to Hitler, a complication in the chain of command that could only augur ill for Rundstedt's control of the battle. The successful breakout from Salerno, in addition to boosting Allied morale, enabled assault shipping to be transferred from the Mediterranean to Britain. For a contested landing on the French coast, warships, transports, and landing craft would be required in numbers hitherto inconceivable. Of the 5,300 vessels that would form the invasion fleet, roughly a quarter were warships. Chief among these were the battleships, cruisers, and destroyers of the bombarding force. In support of landings in the Mediterranean, they had demonstrated a deadly combination of accurate and heavy gunfire. This would be the battering ram that would breach Hitler's Atlantic Wall. In the air, the preparations for Overlord continued to gather pace. In 1943, the United States 8th Air Force had been joined by the 9th, a tactical command transferred from the Mediterranean. In 1944, these forces, in association with the RAF, initiated a major campaign of high-profile attacks on vital strategic targets both in France and Germany. The objective was to draw the Luftwaffe to battle and so secure absolute dominance in the skies over Europe. By the spring of 1944, Allied preparations for a cross-channel invasion were nearly complete. The build-up of men and equipment in Britain was reaching its climax. Hardly a town or county remained unaffected. Everywhere, ordnance depots, tank parks, and supply dumps proliferated. One of the best fighter aircraft of the war, the North American P-51 Mustang, was the remarkable product of British and American collaboration. Built in America to British specifications and with a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, it outperformed every other fighter then in service. In sweeps over Europe in the months leading up to D-Day, it would contribute decisively to the destruction of the Luftwaffe as an effective fighter force. The Hawker Typhoon was originally designed as a pure fighter, a replacement for the now obsolete Hawker Hurricane. But it was as a ground attack aircraft that the Typhoon and its later variant, the Tempest, were to excel. Both aircraft were configured to carry racks of wing-mounted rockets. These were cheap to produce and could be fitted with either armor-piercing or high-explosive warheads. Rockets transformed the offensive potential of these aircraft, enabling targets to be attacked with near-pinpoint accuracy. Of the many varieties of amphibious assault craft available to the Allies, the largest and most indispensable was the landing ship. These vessels marked a revolution in maritime technology. In contrast to the landing craft, the landing ship was a fully seaworthy vessel, yet it performed an essentially similar function, and on a vastly greater scale. Like the landing craft, the landing ship could be adapted for a variety of roles, but its principal function was the transportation of troops and tanks directly from their port of embarkation to the beachhead. Landing ships had only entered service in 1943, but had already demonstrated their value during the invasions of Sicily and Italy. On D-Day, over 300 of these vessels would be available. They would be the workhorses of beachhead reinforcement and supply. The American M4, or Sherman as it was known in Britain, began coming off the production lines in March 1942 and quickly became the standard battle tank in both the American and British armies. Although poorly armed in comparison to German tanks, the M4 was cheap and easy to manufacture, and vast numbers were available for the invasion. Variants included the Sherman Firefly, an upgunned M4 designed for tank duels. The duplex drive had a waterproofed hull and was equipped with a flotation screen and propeller for amphibious assault. M4s were also modified as engineering vehicles for beach or minefield clearance. In coastal areas, the final training of assault troops was underway. As D-Day approached, the exercises were made more complex and realistic. Beachhead management and control assumed greater importance. Assault parties were trained to engage pillboxes and bunkers, and naval shore parties to coordinate fire support. This phase of the battle would almost certainly be the most crucial, and many of the men who would land with the initial wave were veterans of several campaigns. Others were regular army and had been training and preparing for years, but of those in the following waves, the vast majority had yet to be tested in action. Their contribution might prove to be equally crucial. No one could fully anticipate the course of the battle to come. Divisions might be fed into an advance or thrown into a last-ditch defense of the beachhead. For these reasons, many of the follow-up forces were also trained in assault landings, in attack and defense, in hand-to-hand combat, and in the techniques of assaulting fortified positions. Among all the services, morale was high. There was a feeling of common purpose and a sense that the war in Europe was reaching its supreme climax. Official secrecy ensured that only a few knew the actual date and place of the landings, but all were aware that D-Day was imminent. All of the essential preconditions for a cross-channel attack had been met. Allied air and naval superiority was complete. The men were well trained and equipped. Many were apprehensive, but all shared a fundamental confidence in their collective ability and in the ultimate success of the enterprise. Since Stalingrad, the German army had been fighting a largely defensive war in the east. The loss in that campaign of almost 500,000 men, as well as vast quantities of equipment, gravely undermined its offensive capability. The subsequent destruction of the German forces in Africa and the war of attrition in Italy only served to further diminish this once formidable war machine. Yet neither then, nor in 1944, was there any fundamental revision of the German order of battle. Instead of reducing the number of field divisions and redeploying along a shorter and more defensible frontage, the divisions themselves were reorganized and their establishment strengths reduced from 9 to 6 battalions. Even divisions that had been utterly destroyed were reconstituted with skeleton cadre and slotted back into the order of battle. Divisional frontages remained unchanged, as did the operational demands placed upon them. This, coupled with a strategy of no withdrawal and a chronic shortage of reserves, was to place a heavy burden on fighting troops in every theatre of the conflict. In Normandy, the 7th Army was similarly composed of understrength divisions, many of which were ill-equipped and included units unsuitable for anything other than static defense. This situation was only partly redeemed by Rommel's emphasis on fixed fortifications and the rapid deployment of armor. Even as late as 1944, the backbone of German panzer divisions remained the Mark IV battle tank. Originally designed in the 1930s as an infantry support tank, the Mark IV proved to be a superb machine, sound, reliable, and supremely versatile. From 1941, the Mark IV was given additional armor and re-equipped with successively heavier armament. The original 75mm howitzer was replaced in 1942 by a 75mm long-barreled gun. This in turn was superseded in 1943 by a longer-barreled, high-velocity weapon. Progressive improvements in armor were made possible by the superiority of the basic design. Between 1941 and 1944, protection was doubled, and despite an increase in weight of several tons, there was no significant loss of speed or maneuverability. The Mark IV also proved eminently suited to field refits, and many machines were upgraded in service. The Mark V, or Panther, first appeared in 1943. Originally inspired by the superlative Soviet T-34, it was designed and produced from prototype in less than a year. Early production Panthers suffered from a number of design defects and proved unreliable in service. But when these faults were corrected, the tank quickly established itself as a fearsome fighting machine. With heavy, sloping armor and a powerful 75mm gun, the Panther was more than a match for any Allied tank. By 1944, the Panther was beginning to replace the aging Mark IV as the main battle tank in service with the Wehrmacht. The Mark VI, or Tiger tank, was available only in small numbers. These were normally grouped in independent tank battalions, attached to division or corps. Although the Tiger was the most heavily armoured and powerfully gunned of all German tanks, it lacked manoeuvrability, and optimal performance depended on careful maintenance and a highly trained crew. This, combined with its weight, limited range and slow speed, made it more suitable for defence than attack. But deployed in support of fixed defences, even limited numbers of Tigers could make an immense contribution to the battle. Despite the setbacks and reverses of 1943, morale within the German army still remained high. Among frontline units, there was a conscious recognition of past achievements, a high level of professionalism, and a wealth of experience. Bonds of comradeship formed in training had been tested in the gravest of adversities. This was especially true of the Waffen-SS. In the East, the SS had demonstrated a fanatical determination, proving as resolute in defence as they were vigorous in attack. In 1944, the SS Panzer divisions were the only units in the army maintained at or near establishment in armour and men. Rundstedt would have 6 such divisions for the Battle of Normandy. It was upon these that he and many of his officers pinned their strategies and their hopes. By 1944, the Allies had established a massive lead in the clandestine war of intelligence gathering and deception. While German reconnaissance flights flown over Britain had virtually ceased, those flown over occupied Europe by the Allies were growing more numerous every day. Yet aerial reconnaissance provided only a part of the volume of information that helped to formulate and refine Allied plans. A wealth of information came from the occupied territories themselves. In the preceding years, the resistance networks had been armed and organized by British agents. Almost all were equipped with radio transmitters. Information gathered by the networks was often of immense value. Reports from the resistance kept Allied planners abreast of every development: the location of fuel and ammunition dumps, enemy troop strengths and morale, and the existence of camouflaged installations, often invisible from the air. In May alone, nearly 4,000 such reports were sent to England. Some networks were inevitably discovered and compromised, but the sheer volume of intelligence gathered more than outweighed the risks involved. Another rich source of information was, ironically, the German army itself. As early as 1940, British intelligence had been regularly decoding German radio ciphers. Such an elaborate system of secrecy surrounded these operations that the German army remained utterly unaware that its security had been so gravely compromised. From these sources, the Allies knew that the Germans expected the invasion to take place in the area of the Pas-de-Calais. To reinforce this belief, and to ensure the continuing commitment of men and resources to the area, they contrived a huge campaign of deception. For every mission flown over Normandy, 2 were flown over the Pas-de-Calais. Radio traffic was artificially generated to convince the Germans that this was where they intended to land. Other clues were dropped to suggest diversionary landings would be made in Norway and in the west of France. To support these efforts, naval operations, including naval reconnaissance and minesweeping, were conducted with equal or greater thoroughness in the Straits of Dover and in the North Atlantic waters between Scotland and Norway. Even when the Allies landed in Normandy, it was hoped that these measures would still have residual consequences, causing the German High Command to hesitate, suspect Normandy of being a diversion, and maintain the concentration of troops in the Pas-de-Calais. In May, the air offensive was further escalated with systematic low-level attacks on a range of secondary targets in France and the Low Countries. These included individual transportation targets, enemy headquarters, radar and communication systems, airfields and bridges, and ammunition, fuel and supply dumps. To ensure security and to reinforce the campaign of deception, the offensive was mounted on a broad front, with the greatest concentration of attacks falling in the area of the Pas-de-Calais. Simultaneously, resistance activity was stepped up. These operations, though necessarily limited and highly localized in nature, helped to further disable the transport and communication systems and to tie up significant German forces that could be more profitably employed in coastal defense. In mid-May, with impeccable timing, the last strategic deception began to unfold. In Italy, the Allied armies began their long-prepared offensive against the Gustav Line. By the end of May 1944, all of the essential preconditions for a cross-channel attack had been met. In the Atlantic and in the waters between Britain and the continent, Allied naval power was supreme. In the skies over France and the Low Countries, their air forces had achieved almost total mastery. In the months leading up to D-Day, the transportation offensive had been pressed with mounting intensity. Throughout northwest France, hardly a bridge remained intact. The radar and communication system was in ruins, and the 3rd Air Fleet reduced to little more than a skeleton formation. In Britain, the long period of preparation was coming to an end. The assembly of men and equipment was complete. Training programs were being wound down, final rehearsals conducted, and the men briefed. In Italy, the Allies had captured the forbidding redoubt of Monte Cassino, turned the Gustav Line, and at last broken into the Liri Valley. By the end of the month, they were advancing on a broad front. The capture of Rome was now only a matter of time. The month of June opened auspiciously for the Allies. For the Germans, it promised only further exhausting battles and a remorseless, steady withering of their strength in every theatre of operations. Allied planners had set a target date for the landings of June the 5th. This promised the most favourable conjunction of tide, weather and moonlight. As D-Day approached, the complex machinery of mobilisation was set in motion. The first task was to assemble the assault formations close to their ports of embarkation in southern England. This was a massive operation, requiring close cooperation between the various military and civil authorities and conducted amid the tightest security. Assembly areas were sealed off, ports and harbours placed under military control, and civilian movements highly restricted. Equipment and supplies were loaded first. Then, at the end of May, the men began going aboard. Everything had been planned down to the last detail. On the first day, enough men and equipment had to be put ashore to fight a major campaign, to repel any counter-offensives, and to clear and secure the landing areas for the safe disembarkation of the following waves. Of the 50 divisions stationed in Britain, 8 were selected for the initial landings. These would be reinforced by elements of a further 4. Also landing on D-Day would be 3 independent armoured brigades, 3 airborne divisions, and 2 brigades of special forces. By June the 3rd, the embarkation of the assault force was complete and the Armada readied to sail. But then, on the following day,